If you really want it, you can do it. Look, the stitches are right there. In today's video, we are going to pull back the curtain and reveal 25 celebrity plastic surgeries that went absolutely terribly wrong. We're talking about procedures that were originally designed to enhance beauty but instead ended up as a total disaster. From truly shocking transformations to terrifying near-death experiences, these are the exact moments when fame, fortune, and the relentless pursuit of perfection came with a devastating price tag. Don't you dare look away because the very first name on our list is going to completely surprise you. Donatella Versace. Donatella Versace. As the heiress to a massive fashion empire and a true symbol of Italian elegance back in the 90s, she didn't just take over the creative reins after the tragic death of her brother Gianni. She also began a physical transformation that would eventually leave the entire world with its jaw on the floor. As time went on, her face began to change in some truly drastic ways. Rhinoplasties thinned her nose down to something that looked almost surgically artificial, while multiple facelifts stretched her skin so tight that it started to look like it was made out of wax. Her lips, which were once quite discreet, acquired a massive unnatural volume thanks to all the augmentations, and her cheekbones grew totally disproportionately, presumably caused by excessive fillers or implants. The image that Donatella projects today is a far cry from the classic beauty she once represented. Instead of elegance, many people now just see excess. Instead of seeing style, they see a walking warning sign. Her transformation didn't just make her almost unrecognizable, it turned her into a persistent symbol of the dangers of cosmetic surgery when it goes completely unchecked. She is a powerful figure, yes, absolutely, but she is also an uncomfortable mirror showing the steep price that is sometimes paid for trying to defy time. Melanie Griffith. Melanie Griffith, that iconic actress who conquered Hollywood with her role in Working Girl, went from being admired for her stunning natural beauty to becoming a tragic example of the excesses of the scalpel. Over the years, she underwent multiple aesthetic procedures, facelifts, dermal fillers, and Botox treatments that completely and utterly transformed her face. Her cheekbones, which were once soft and defined, became artificially and jarringly prominent. Her forehead, rendered almost immobile by an excess of Botox, limited her capacity for expression, leaving her with a rigid and distant appearance. The criticism didn't take long to arrive, and the media turned her transformation into a constant, ruthless spectacle. What is most shocking is that Melanie herself has admitted to deeply regretting some of her decisions, recognizing that she had lost her true essence when looking in the mirror. Today, although she has learned to accept her current image, her story remains as a bitter reminder for us all. Neither talent, nor money, nor fame are enough to escape the harsh consequences of a forced beauty. Carol Bryan. Carol Bryan wasn't exactly a Hollywood celebrity, but her story resonated around the world as a truly chilling warning. Back in 2009, at 47 years old, seeking to revitalize her face with some simple aesthetic fillers, she ended up trapped in a living medical nightmare. A so-called professional wrongly injected her with two different types of filler, including silicone directly into her forehead and cheeks. What followed was a progressive and devastating deformation. Her face began to swell completely out of control. Her forehead actually collapsed over her eyes, and it got to the point where she lost part of her vision. Isolated for years, Carol fell into a deep, dark depression. She couldn't bear to look at herself in the mirror, and she couldn't go out without hiding. Finally, she underwent a grueling 17-hour reconstruction surgery that managed to repair some of the damage, although she never recovered the vision in one of her eyes. Today, her story moves us and serves as a major alert. Carol now dedicates her life to warning others about the dangers of poorly regulated cosmetic procedures. Because what happened to her wasn't just a simple aesthetic error, it was an avoidable tragedy with consequences that last a lifetime. Jocelyn Wildenstein. Nicknamed by the media as the Catwoman, Jocelyn Wildenstein took cosmetic surgery to a level that few people would dare to even imagine. Her obsession with exotic felines and her desperate need to keep the attention of her millionaire husband pushed her to spend millions of dollars to literally transform her entire face. Blepharoplasty's cheek implants, facelifts, and multiple fillers gave her face an exaggeratedly angular shape and eyes elongated upwards, seeking to emulate the big cats that she admired so much. Although she has denied having abused surgery, her appearance tells a completely different story. Over the years, she has transformed into an undeniable icon representing the absolute extreme of surgical excess. Even now, at 84 years old, she is still famous not just for her lavish lifestyle, but for a face that has become completely unrecognizable. Her case isn't just eccentric. It exposes a deeply uncomfortable truth about what happens when a simple obsession with change spirals into a full-blown addiction. It proves that not even the biggest fortune in the world can save you from a total disaster. Igor and Grichka Bogdanov were scientists, massive television celebrities, and truly fascinating figures within French pop culture. But these two brothers didn't just grab attention for their wild theories about the universe. They turned heads because of their increasingly alien-like faces. Starting way back in the 90s, the twins began an aesthetic transformation that eventually left the entire world completely baffled. Even though they always swore up and down that they never had surgery, their incredibly high exaggerated cheekbones, along with their elongated chins and visibly fuller lips, told a completely different story to anyone looking. Their skin was stretched to a surreal point, giving them an almost cartoonish look that sparked endless headlines, memes, and wild theories all over the internet. The press didn't take long to nickname them the French aliens, but instead of hiding away in shame, they embraced it with humor and kept appearing on television, looking like characters walked straight out of a science fiction movie. Their image eventually turned into a strange, peculiar sort of warning for everyone else. When aesthetics spiral out of control and denial takes the place of self-reflection, the result can be just as fascinating as it is deeply disturbing. Let's talk about Raji Narina Singh. What Raji Narina Singh was looking for was actually quite simple. She just wanted an affordable touch-up to enhance her natural features. But back in 2005, her desire for beauty led her down a dark, dead-end road. She literally went to a fake doctor who promised her fast, cheap results. Instead of using safe-approved products, this person injected a toxic mixture of cement tire sealant and mineral oil directly into her face. The result was absolutely devastating, causing hard lumps, severe facial deformities, and unbearable physical and emotional pain. Her skin actually started to harden, her face completely lost its shape, and her self-esteem hit absolute rock bottom. Feeling ashamed and terrified, Raji spent years hiding away from the world. It wasn't until she appeared on the famous show Botched that her tragic story finally came to light. There, a team of skilled surgeons managed to partially improve her appearance, even though those harmful substances remain stuck in her body to this day. Today, Raji acts as a tireless activist who warns everyone about the true horrors of these black market treatments. Her face, marked by such negligence, has become a living symbol of a very painful truth. Going cheap on plastic surgery can literally cost you your life. Next up, we have Anastasia Pokreshchuk. In a world where beauty standards are constantly shifting, Anastasia Pokreshchuk decided not to follow them, but to completely reinvent them. This Ukrainian influencer didn't just challenge the norms, she shattered them completely with a transformation that left the world speechless. It all started with just a few minor tweaks, but it soon spiraled into a full-blown obsession. This obsession led her to inject fillers over and over again, focusing especially on her cheekbones. The result is a set of cheeks so prominent, they look like they were sculpted by a surrealist artist, creating sharp contours that are impossible to ignore. Besides her cheekbones, Anastasia also pumped fillers into her lips, her chin, and her jawline, creating an angular extreme face that many people think borders on the grotesque. But she sees it very differently. She claims to feel more confident, powerful, and glamorous now than she ever did before. While the public argues over whether her look is a bold statement of empowerment or a cry for help, Anastasia stands her ground. Because for her, beauty isn't about pleasing other people, it's about unapologetically creating her own version of herself. Now let's look at Mickey Rourke. Back in the 80s, Mickey Rourke was the absolute synonym for rugged handsomeness and unmatched charisma. But the star of 9.5 Weeks and Angel Heart took an unexpected detour when he traded acting for professional boxing, and his face started to pay a heavy price. After suffering multiple brutal injuries in the ring, Rourke turned to reconstructive surgery to try and fix the damage. However, what were supposed to be necessary medical adjustments ended up turning into a parade of badly executed botched procedures. We're talking about 5 nose jobs, facial implants, and fillers that completely deformed his original facial structure. His face, which used to be chiseled and expressive, became rounded, swollen, and stiff. It looks almost as if he is trapped behind a mask of flesh, and the actor doesn't deny it one bit. In interviews, he has confessed his deep regret, even admitting that he simply chose the wrong surgeon to put him back together. Even with all that struggle, his raw talent managed to make a massive comeback in the movie The Wrestler, where the ruggedness of his damaged appearance actually enhanced a truly heartbreaking performance. Nowadays, Mickey Rourke is remembered just as much for the actor he used to be as he is for what his face eventually came to represent in the public eye. It really shows that incredibly thin line between necessary reconstruction and a complete irreversible disaster. Drop a number 1 in the comments if you feel sorry for what happened to Mickey Rourke's face. Now let's talk about Courtney Cox. Courtney Cox, the unforgettable Monica Geller from Friends, was always admired for her fresh, natural look and that timeless beauty she radiated. But the relentless, crushing pressure of Hollywood to stay young forever ended up pushing her down a path that altered way more than just her face. It changed how she saw herself entirely. What started out as just a few subtle touches of Botox and some dermal fillers here and there soon spiraled into a transformation that fans started noticing with real concern. Her cheekbones began looking way too prominent and sharp. Her forehead looked completely stiff and her facial expressions became increasingly artificial and forced. In a moment of raw honesty, Courtney actually confessed that she reached a point where she didn't even recognize herself in the mirror anymore. Back in 2017, she made a brave decision to dissolve all those fillers and return to her real natural face. Since then, she's spoken very openly about the dangers of obsessing over eternal youth, encouraging other women to accept aging with dignity and without any shame. Her story isn't just a cosmetic warning, it is a powerful reflection on identity, social pressure, and the courage to say enough is enough before it's too late. Katie Price. Katie Price, the British ex-model who was once worshipped for her natural beauty, has gone from gracing magazine covers to becoming a living, breathing warning sign. With a history of over a dozen surgeries, her transformation has been so extreme that today she looks like a totally distorted version of who she used to be. Her sixth facelift seemed to be the absolute breaking point for her appearance. The skin was pulled so tight that it left her with a frozen, unnatural expression, almost as if she were wearing a permanent latex mask. Add to that the heavy fillers in her cheekbones, lips, and jaw, which ended up completely deforming her original facial proportions. Criticism pours in from every direction, but Katie, she doesn't even flinch. She actually compares her various medical procedures to the routine maintenance of a car. She has said that if something breaks, you fix it, and she assures everyone she will keep getting operated on until she reaches her own ideal of perfection. But what most people see isn't perfection at all, but rather a chilling, scary warning. When surgery turns into an addiction, the mirror no longer reflects the truth. It just shows a face that is increasingly unrecognizable and less human. Priscilla Presley. Priscilla Presley, the woman who once embodied the classic beauty of Hollywood and was the eternal love of Elvis. She ended up being yet another tragic victim of the dark side of vanity. In 2003, she made a choice that would change her face and her life forever. She trusted an unlicensed doctor who injected low-grade industrial silicone into her face. The result was absolutely grotesque. She developed hard lumps, muscle paralysis, visible scarring, and a weird plastic shine to her skin that robbed her of all naturalness. Her face, which used to be soft and elegant, started looking like a tense, deformed mask, incapable of expressing any real emotion. Although she tried to reverse the damage with corrective surgeries in 2008, the transformation was largely irreversible. Her swollen lips and inflamed cheekbones turned into the symbol of a brutal, unforgivable mistake. Priscilla remains a public figure today, but her appearance no longer speaks of legendary glamour. It speaks as a warning, highlighting the horrors that can happen when a needle used wrongly becomes a life sentence. Because neither fame nor love nor nostalgia justifies losing yourself completely when you stand in front of the mirror. Sharon Osbourne. Sharon Osbourne has always been frank with zero filters, and she had no problem admitting to her multiple visits to the operating room. But in 2021, her obsession with staying fresh crossed a very dangerous line. A facelift that lasted over 5 hours left her face so tight and deformed that even she couldn't help but compare herself to Quasimodo himself. The surgery caused a brutal asymmetry, leaving one eye noticeably lower than the other. Her jaw was tense to the point of being grotesque, and she suffered physical pain that took months to finally fade away. Her face, far from making her look younger, turned into a cruel caricature of what she once was. Even though she went through a corrective operation, the emotional damage had already been done. That was when Sharon made a radical decision to never ever undergo cosmetic surgery again. She said it's over. This was an absolute nightmare. Her case is the perfect example of how the relentless search for perfection can not only fail, but it can end up deforming your very essence. Because sometimes the most terrifying thing isn't actually getting older. It's the extreme lengths you are willing to go to just to avoid it. Let's talk about Carrot Top. Scott Thompson, who we all know better as Carrot Top, was always a bit of an eccentric figure with his bright, fiery red hair, ripped muscles, and that trademark absurd brand of humor. But over time, his physical transformation has made him almost completely unrecognizable. And let me tell you, it is definitely not because of the laughter anymore. Even though he denies ever going under the knife, his face tells a completely different and undeniable story. Puffy, inflated cheeks, eyebrows arched way too high, and tight skin that shines like plastic all point to a heavy mix of fillers, Botox, and likely facelifts. What used to be an expressive face now looks more like a stiff mask that just refuses to move. The rumors just keep coming constantly, and the audience honestly doesn't know whether to watch his comedy act or stare at his face. He tries to take it with a sense of humor, but the reality isn't quite as funny because behind all that makeup and muscle lies a very uncomfortable truth. It shows that even comedians can fall right into the dangerous trap of obsession with their image. And when the face itself becomes the joke, the question stops being about what he had done and starts being about what is actually left of him. Then there is Pete Burns, the unmistakable voice behind the massive hit You Spin Me Round. He went from being a provocative androgynous pop star to becoming a tragic figure defined by surgical excess. His obsession with modifying his image led him down an unstoppable spiral of interventions, totaling more than 300 procedures throughout his entire life. It all started with a simple rhinoplasty to fix a broken nose, but that was really just the very beginning. 4 nose surgeries plus cheek implants, lip enhancements, and constant injections ended up completely disfiguring his face. At one critical moment, a severe complication with his lips even rushed him into the emergency operating room. Pete admitted that his addiction to surgery was actually a way for him to express his identity. However, he also acknowledged that many of those procedures were unnecessary and incredibly dangerous. His image went from transgressive to alarming. He passed away in 2016, leaving behind a powerful musical legacy. But he also left behind a chilling warning about what happens when the body becomes a canvas for insecurities. Art can end up becoming a devastating physical and emotional tragedy. Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers didn't just break barriers in comedy, she literally did it with her face too. Throughout her life, the legendary host subjected herself to an avalanche of surgeries, including facelifts, rhinoplasties, Botox injections, and liposuction. The list was almost as long as her extensive career itself. In her final years, her face no longer showed signs of aging, but it didn't show much humanity either. It was frozen, tightened, and reconfigured over and over again as if she were a sculpture constantly in progress. And the most surprising part is that Joan never once denied it. She made it part of her routine, mocked herself, and proclaimed herself the human poster child for plastic surgery. Although many criticized her for going too far, she owned it with humor and zero shame. But behind the laughter was a raw truth, the fear of fading away. She died in 2014 after a medical complication, leaving a legacy of acid wit and stage bravery, but also a permanent warning about how far transformation can be pushed before there is nothing left of the original person. Now let's look at Janice Dickinson. Janice Dickinson, the self-proclaimed first supermodel of the world. She was one of the most coveted faces on the runways in the 70s and 80s, but her battle against the passing of time led her down a path where beauty no longer shined. It was forced. It all began with a breast augmentation in her 30s, but soon came the facelifts, liposuction, and Botox, followed by fillers, cheek implants, and so much more. Her face, once naturally angular and magnetic, turned into a rigid, puffy surface completely lacking in expression. Despite the warnings, Janice didn't stop, and the consequences weren't just physical. In 2013, she ended up declaring bankruptcy partly due to debts piled up from cosmetic treatments. Even so, she never hid a thing. She speaks about her transformation with total frankness and absolutely no remorse. For some, she is an example of bravery, but for others, she is a heartbreaking display of what happens when eternal youth becomes an obsession that neither fame nor money can satisfy. And finally, Simon Cowell. Simon Cowell, known for his critical gaze and sharp tongue on shows like American Idol and The X Factor, he used to project an image of authority, elegance, and neatness. But his fight against aging took him into territory that even he couldn't control. It started off with just a bit of Botox trying to soften the inevitable lines of time. But very quickly came the facelifts that stretched his skin so tight, it left him with a permanently fixed expression that was practically a caricature. His cheekbones, which had been artificially elevated, combined with an immobile forehead and a frozen, perpetual smile, ended up alarming even the people closest to him in his inner circle. It got so bad that his young son, with that brutal, unfiltered honesty, that only children have actually told him that he looked like a complete stranger. Simon, to the surprise of many, actually admitted it publicly. He confessed that he had gone way too far. He recognized the mistake, decided to ditch the fillers entirely, and moved toward adopting a much more natural appearance. His story is really that of a powerful man who thought he was immune to the mirror, but ended up becoming the victim of the exact same ruthless judgment that he used to dish out from a panel. Because as it turns out, even the judges themselves can be judged for their own questionable decisions. Heidi Montag. Back in the year 2010, Heidi Montag, the breakout star of the reality show The Hills, did something so extreme that not even the most surgery-obsessed people could dare to imagine it. She underwent a staggering 10 surgical procedures in less than 24 hours. That is right. In the span of just a single day, she transformed herself from the sweet girl next door into a living, breathing plastic doll. The laundry list of interventions included cheek implants, a brow lift, chin reduction, a second nose job, lip injections, and even more on top of that. Her face, having been completely restructured, lost absolutely every single trace of natural humanity it once had. What was supposed to be the ultimate look of perfection ended up becoming for many observers a monstrous distortion of beauty. Heidi tried to defend her decision, saying she was chasing an ideal of perfection, but later on she confessed about the brutal side effects. There was intense physical pain, deep emotional insecurity, and the overwhelming pressure of living inside a body that no longer felt like it was hers. Her story stands today as a brutal warning. When the pursuit of perfection turns into urgency and scalpels start replacing self-esteem, the body stops being a temple and turns into a laboratory of risks. Amanda Lepore. Amanda Lepore never wanted to look like just anyone else. She wanted to be a living fantasy, a flesh and blood doll ripped straight out of a dream, or perhaps a nightmare of limitless glamour. And to actually achieve that, she turned her body into a piece of surgical art. From a very young age, Amanda underwent gender reassignment surgery, followed by nose jobs, lip augmentations, cheek implants, brow lifts, and an endless cycle of fillers. But the most shocking part was her decision to surgically remove her lower ribs just to shrink her waist, a practice that is as controversial as it is dangerous. Her figure, with its impossible proportions, hyper-volumized lips, and skin so tight and shiny, it defies logic, challenges all medical standards. Many people see her as a symbol of excess, while others view her as a living work of aesthetic freedom. Amanda does not hide, nor does she try to justify herself. She proudly claims to have the most expensive body in the world and presents herself as an emblem of identity transformation and transgression. Her image might divide opinions, but it never goes unnoticed because for her beauty isn't measured by naturalness but by sheer impact. Lara Flynn Boyle. In the 1990s, Lara Flynn Boyle embodied the mystery, elegance, and enigmatic beauty of Twin Peaks. But time and Hollywood are unforgiving forces, and she decided to face them with syringes and scalpels until she became a stretched-out shadow of who she was. It all started with subtle tweaks, a little Botox here, a filler there, but over the years her face began losing its natural essence. Her lips, once fine and expressive, became swollen and tense. Her cheekbones were lifted way more than necessary, giving her a puffy and disproportionate look. The facial symmetry vanished, and her expression, which is so vital for an actress, was left almost completely paralyzed. Lara never spoke publicly about her interventions, but her silence didn't stop the public from noticing the drastic changes. The images spoke for themselves. She was simply no longer the star that everyone remembered. Today, her story resonates as a silent warning. Sometimes the attempt to stop time only ends up accelerating the disappearance of oneself. Meg Ryan. Meg Ryan was the face of romantic comedies, the eternal charming girl who made an entire generation sigh. Her spontaneous smile, her freshness, and that unmistakable spark made her the undisputed sweetheart of America. But with time, that image faded away, and not because of age, but because of the surgery. Seeking to hold on to her youth, Meg turned to injections, facial fillers, and procedures that completely transformed her appearance. Her lips, which used to be so subtle and delicate, suddenly became notably larger and swollen, while her puffy, stiff cheeks completely altered the natural harmony of her face. The Botox in her forehead and around her eyes didn't just wipe away the wrinkles. It also erased a huge part of her ability to show any real expressiveness. Even though she has never openly spoken about the surgeries, the fans noticed absolutely everything down to the smallest detail. And they truly mourned it because she was no longer the Meg who laughed, cried, and made us all fall in love with her on the big screen. She had become someone else entirely, with a face that seemed frozen in time, looking like a distant, faded version of who she used to be. Her story is perhaps the saddest one of them all, not because of some big scandal, but because of the silent, heartbreaking loss of an identity that had conquered millions of hearts. It was an identity that, in her desperate attempt to preserve it forever, she ultimately ended up making disappear completely. Lil' Kim didn't just break the mold when it came to her music, she shattered boundaries with her image too. As a hip-hop icon, she was a symbol of female power and provocative style, but her physical transformation has been so radical that many people still struggle to even recognize her today. It all started after a traumatic experience with domestic abuse, which left her with a broken nose and forced her to undergo reconstructive surgeries. However, what began as a genuine medical necessity eventually spiraled into an endless chain of aesthetic procedures. We're talking extreme nasal refinement, heavy fillers in her lips and cheekbones, and skin bleaching that continues to generate controversy to this day. Her face slowly started losing its unique features, its expressiveness, and its naturalness, until she became almost completely unrecognizable to the world. The criticism came pouring in from every single angle: the media, her fans, and even her own colleagues in the industry. But Lil' Kim has always responded with a cold detachment, denying certain interventions and fiercely defending her right to decide what she does with her own body. Nevertheless, the drastic change is absolutely undeniable and impossible to ignore. The woman who once dazzled us with her raw strength and singular beauty now reflects something much sadder and deeper. It shows how pain, immense pressure, and obsession can mold and deform even the most powerful voices among us. Courtney Cox. Courtney Cox, the unforgettable Monica Geller from Friends, was always admired for her fresh, natural look and her timeless beauty. But the relentless pressure from Hollywood to stay young forever ended up leading her down a path that altered not just her face, but her perception of herself. What started as just a few subtle touches with Botox and dermal fillers soon turned into a transformation that fans began to notice with growing concern. Her cheekbones started to look way too prominent and unnatural. Her forehead became rigid and her expression grew increasingly artificial with every public appearance. In a moment of raw honesty, Courtney confessed that she reached a point where she couldn't even recognize herself in the mirror anymore. In 2017, she made a brave decision to dissolve all the fillers and return to her real, natural face. Since then, she has spoken openly about the dangers of obsessing over eternal youth, encouraging other women to accept aging with dignity and without shame. Her story isn't just an aesthetic warning. It's a powerful reflection on identity, social pressure, and the value of knowing when to say enough is enough. Katie Price. Katie Price, the British ex-model who was once admired for her natural beauty, has gone from gracing magazine covers to becoming a living warning sign. With more than a dozen surgeries in her history, her transformation has been so extreme that today she looks like a distorted version of herself. Her sixth facelift was really the breaking point that changed everything. The skin was pulled so tight that it left her with a frozen, unnatural expression, almost as if she were wearing a latex mask. Add to that the fillers in her cheekbones, lips, and jawline, which ended up deforming her original proportions completely. Criticism rains down on her from all fronts, but Katie doesn't seem to be fazed by it at all. She actually compares her procedures to the maintenance of a car. She has said that if something is broken, you fix it, and she assures everyone that she will keep getting surgeries until she reaches her ideal of perfection. But what many people see isn't perfection, it's a chilling cautionary tale. When surgery turns into an addiction, there is no mirror left that reflects the truth, only a face that becomes increasingly unrecognizable and less human. Priscilla Presley. Priscilla Presley, the woman who once embodied the classic beauty of Hollywood and was the eternal love of Elvis. She ended up being just another victim of the dark side of vanity, and in 2003, she made a decision that would change her face and her life forever. She trusted an unlicensed doctor who injected industrial-grade silicone into her face, and the result was absolutely grotesque. It caused hard lumps, muscle paralysis, visible scars, and a skin texture with a plastic shine that robbed her of all naturalness. Her face, which was once soft and elegant, turned into a tense, deformed mask, rendering her incapable of expressing almost any emotion. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have truly seen the incredibly steep price that comes with chasing absolute perfection. If this series left you stunned, please subscribe. Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know which of these transformations surprised you the most. We will see you in the next video with even more gripping stories that you simply won't be able to look away from.